Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, joined here with my sister Connie Blackwood. And this month, we want to talk about ways that we can be more proactive when it comes to anxiety and strategies that we can use to minimize its impact and actually eliminate it in our life. And, you might be saying to yourself, that's impossible. Anxiety is so prevalent in my life. It really does control many parts of my life, but we want to give you some strategies so that you can make a plan ahead of time and be able to deal with it before it becomes a problem. So, Connie, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks for having me. I love this idea of being proactive about your anxiety and being able to think ahead of things, right? Like thinking about your triggers and thinking about the things that cause your anxiety to happen and how to, you know, watch, like be on alert for it before it even starts making an impact on our lives.
Right. And it's like, don't wait until you're anxious before you do something about it, right? Because then you're already in your fight or flight cycle in your body. It's really hard once you get to that place to reverse those steps, right? So, today what we want to express is, well, how do we figure out what is triggering our anxiety so that we can stop it before it becomes an issue?
So one thing that you can do is like actually take a notebook with you. And as you start feeling anxious about things, record either what happened prior, what you were feeling, what you were thinking, maybe who you interacted with. Maybe it was a place that caused you to be anxious. Maybe it was a person. Maybe it was just something that you don't even recognize. Maybe you started feeling anxious, you have no idea why. Write it
Mm.
down and maybe write it down what was happening prior, and maybe it will show you what actually caused that in you. And that is a great place to start.
Yeah, I like to use, I don't know if they use it nowadays, but I remember when I was in school, we always had to answer the questions who, what, where, when, and why, right? Those questions when, really examining an issue or trying to figure out a plan of action or even, you know, um, giving people details about something, right? And I think that's a good strategy to use when it comes to figuring out our triggers, right? Because let's just quickly go through them. Like, who do I feel anxious around? Sometimes I feel anxiety just even thinking about a specific person or having to talk to that person or having to encounter that person, right? And so that if that is a case for our listeners, that would be one thing to write down. Who are those people that trigger your anxiety, right? That every time that you talk to them, your anxiety just goes through the roof.
Even taking that like a little bit further is, you know, maybe it's a group of people. Maybe it's not just one person, maybe it's a group of people. And every time you're around this group of people, it just spikes your anxiety. Make sure you make note of that too. And was it just one person in the group or was it the whole group together? Because maybe that's a group that you might need to leave in order to alleviate some of that anxiety that you're carrying.
And sometimes it's maybe not even about the group. Maybe you'll recognize that it's like every group setting, right? So maybe you'll realize that you don't do as well in group settings. It brings out some of your insecurities, it brings out some self-doubt. And so maybe you will recognize the fact that, I don't do well in large group settings and I need to limit my exposure to that and start meeting with people in smaller groups, maybe three, four at max, right? Because once you realize this about yourself, then you can limit how much anxiety you feel surrounding these different events, right? But sometimes we're like, I have to be at this event. And maybe you can watch the recording. Maybe someone can take notes for you. Maybe someone can bring back the information for you. Or maybe you can even watch it online. Like there's different ways that you can strategize that you don't necessarily have to expose yourself to these situations that cause you to go into these anxiety cycles, you know?
And it can even be, maybe now you can't, but maybe it's something you can work towards. So like now you start up with a group of 3 to 4 people and you work your way up to those big groups again. Maybe it's just a season that you're just
Hmm.
not able to do that. So don't be like, oh, this could be the rest of my life, but ease yourself in and don't overwhelm yourself because you can grow in those areas as well.
Hmm. So the next one would be what? Like what causes us anxiety? And that could be absolutely anything. That could be places, that could be um, circumstances, could be objects, it could be different situations. I think of stresses or expectations. And one major one for me, um, I get triggered a lot by food, right? And if I'm consuming too much of something, it causes my gut health to go wacky, and I am more prone to become anxious about silly things, little things that not normally wouldn't stress me out. But if I'm not eating well and I've let that go unchecked, for me, food is a trigger, right? Sugar is a huge one. Caffeine is a huge one, right? I actually don't even consume caffeine anymore because it is a large trigger for me. So this is a category that is actually quite large and could encompass many different things. Connie, what things kind of pop up for you when you think about like what causes you anxiety?
A lot of the circumstance slash situational types of things pop into my brain. Like an investment falls through, or um, your car has to get $1,000 repair, or you know, my cat could be sick and I have to take it to the vet. And how do I find the time for that and the money and the like? It's just all these things. And it's usually the unforeseen things that get you, right? At least for me. It's the things you don't expect, the things that you don't prepare for. Because I'm one of those people that likes to plan. And so when something unplanned happens, that's when I am usually like anxious about it. Because I'm like, wait, I didn't plan for this, but
Right.
it's happening anyway. So strap in. And so for me, I know that's a trigger. And so when I see an unforeseen circumstance coming, that's when I know I have to start preparing myself for that, right? Because that is one of my triggers. Another one for me is like when I feel unheard, then I start feeling
Mm.
anxious because I'm like, people are misunderstanding me, they don't know my heart, they don't trust me, and those are the thoughts that start getting triggered in my mind, and then my anxiety just goes through the roof, right?
Hmm.
So that's another situation. So for me, it's very situational is the what.
So the next one would be where. You know, I personally don't get triggered by places as much as other things, but I know some people do. And a lot of times that could be associated with having trauma in a specific location or a place, or there's memories there that have negative history. So that is potentially something that we pay attention to. So as you're going through places, like, do you always have a heightened sense of anxiety in the same place? That's something to write down and kind of examine why is that, right? Because the circumstances why you're there might be different, but if you're still having anxiety, then it might be associated with some kind of trauma or memory from when you were in that place in the past, right? Or what that place reminds you of or what it represents, right?
Yeah, I don't really have many of the where ones either. I did when I was younger because, my crazy friends would always find these like decrepit old broken down houses and drag me along. And I almost fell through floorboards and stuff. Like I had reasons to be anxious when we went there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, other than that, not so much. But when trauma happens, I see why people would be anxious even if they go back to that same space.
You know, I was just thinking about of an example that I've some people that I know of go through a lot, but like when they've been having to be hospitalized a lot, or a loved one has the hospital or medical centers or
Mm,
even paramedics or nurses or doctors can cause people a lot of anxiety, right? Because, you know, they've been poked, they've been prodded, they've had relatives, go through traumatic events and pass away in hospitals. So, the moment they get a call from the doctor, right, and have to go in for checkups or having to go in for follow-up exams, like it causes so much anxiety. And, that could be rooted in the fact that there is a lot of fear associated with being in those places and what the outcome could be based on, what you've experienced in the past.
that's a good point. How many of people are scared of going to the dentist? A lot. Because there's not very many pleasant experiences that happen at the dentist.
Yeah, there's a good example. The last one here is when. When do we feel anxiety? When do we feel more heightened, agitation and all of these emotions? And for me, you know, I actually feel more anxiety during my hormonal cycle. I'll be honest with you, right? Things just aren't, I think differently. My ability to process different emotions is inhibited, I'll say, right? So for me, I recognize when one of the first questions I ask myself is like, why am I feeling this way? And oh, is it my hormonal cycle right now? And sometimes it hasn't quite shown up yet, but I'll look at the calendar and I'm like, oh yeah, it's like happening in the next 24 hours. So I know that a lot of what I'm feeling isn't actually based on anything happening in the physical realm, but it's hormonal for me. So that's one thing that I've recognized about myself as I've been paying attention and marking these things out, right? Because when you see these things happening, especially cyclically or repeatedly every time you do something or meet with somebody or go to a certain place, these are triggers that we need to pay attention to because it will speak a lot to how we can create a plan to prepare ahead of time.
I even think about loss, right? Like we lost our dad almost 2 years ago. And, as we hit certain markers along the way, I notice my anxiousness gets higher. And then the other thing that occurred to me is like when I'm in pain, obviously,
Mm.
I'm more easily anxious about things that normally wouldn't bother me. And so I definitely keep an eye on it during those things for sure. I like the way you said the why though, because I think sometimes we go and we experience these things and we don't ask ourselves that question. And that's the basic question you need when you're trying to figure out your triggers. Well, especially if it's not obvious what triggered it, be like, why am I experiencing this right now? Why am I going through this right now?
Right.
And sometimes that will actually lead you to where you need to go, and some of these things are surface, but some of these things have deeper roots, right? Like those traumas that we're talking about have deeper roots that need to be dealt with before that anxiety can be completely stopped. And so sometimes knowing what the trigger is will lead you down a path of deeper healing, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the why is very important. And it is often the very first question I ask myself when I find myself cycling and experiencing a lot of anxiety. It's like, why? Why am I feeling this way? Where is it coming from? And I examine even the thoughts that I'm having, right? Like, what are the thoughts that are prevalent in my mind right now that are consuming me, and where are they coming from? Like, what are they rooted in? And you hit the nail right on the head. You know, the anxiety shows up on the surface. It shows up in the physical, in the emotional, in the tangible areas of our life, but they're rooted in something much more deeper.
Hmm.
And like you said, if we can figure out what these triggers are, we'll often be able to get to the root and then be able to walk through some healing. Because even when we resolve that root, that's where a lot of healing can come from.
And the result of that is then you don't get anxious about those things anymore, right? Like if you resolve the trauma, then you can go back to those places and it not affect you, right? Usually when it is still affecting you, it tells you that there's still stuff there that needs to be healed.
Hmm.
Our triggers can be indicators of things left undone.
Yes, triggers are definitely a reminder of some undealt with issues. So, for everyone who is listening to us today, we really want you to become more proactive when it comes to your anxiety. Don't just let it happen. Don't just let the emotions go wild and the body symptoms to just take over. Become more aware. Become more aware of what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, where it's coming from, what is it rooted in, and then make a plan. And that's what we want to talk with you about next time on the podcast is, how do you take all of this information that you're going to glean over this next 2 weeks as you take our prompt and get that journal out and carry it with you and start recording how you feel throughout the days and what is causing, or when do you feel more heightened anxiety, and keep track, because this is part of the process of you being able to become more proactive and be able to make this plan, right? And when we come back next in 2 weeks from now, we want to share with you, how do you take that information and put it into a practical plan? How do you break it down, and how do you make it something that you can actually use to your benefit? And like we said, stop those anxiety cycles before they start and really set yourself up for better outcomes.
And by making yourself a plan that's tailored for you, then you know that you'll have success, right? Because we can give you tools, but only you know what your triggers are. Only you know what you need to do about those things in order to find success. We'll walk you through how to do that, and it'll be really exciting to see how easy it can be to just place some things ahead of time so that you don't have to go through those anxiety cycles anymore
Mhm.
and find freedom through that.
In the meantime, as always, we love to mention to you that we do have mentors available. If you find that you are struggling and you need someone to talk to, feel free to reach out to us at the No One Stands Alone Foundation, and we would love to meet with you. And you can find all of our mentors on our website. You can check out our profiles, and you can book with us directly there. And you can find all this information at nosafoundation.com. So once again, thank you for joining us on the NOSA Unleashed podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.